This here is the new Razer Blade Stealth, the 2020 model, and it's honestly quite a unique laptop. Razer is addressing a really niche segment of the laptop market with this laptop. Now, if you're part of the target audience, I believe that there are 3 criteria that you have to meet. 1. You must be someone who favors portability and compactness. 2. You require a minimum level of performance for both creative work and gaming. And lastly, you must be someone who's always out in the field, perhaps doing photography, or maybe you're at your friend's place holding a LAN party, or just both. Now, if you don't fit any of those criteria, I would say don't consider this as an option. Now, I'm not saying it's bad, far from it. This is quite possibly the best 13-inch gaming laptop that I've ever experienced. But you have to take note, you are paying a premium for that brand. So unless you're a hardcore Razer fan, I would say that there are better alternatives out there. Now again, if you fit all of those criteria, then I would say this laptop is fantastic. Let's start with build quality. And if you're coming from a previous generation Blade Stealth, well, not much has changed, but I guess that's good. It's got the awesome unibody design that not only looks good but feels good as well, and the entire laptop is really well balanced. I also actually prefer the matte plain finish for the Razer logo instead of the usual green. That simple touch just makes it look slightly more professional. But of course, as usual with the Blade Stealth, it's really easy to see your fingerprint and oil stains, so do give it a good clean every now and then. We now come to the display, and like the previous generation, there is a 4K option. But like always, I would say not to get the 4K option. 4K at 13.3 inches doesn't really make sense. You can't make full use of that resolution, and window scaling is still an issue. But there is a second option, a new option that's available for this generation of the Blade Stealth that I have right here. It's a Full HD IPS panel that supports 100% sRGB and about 75% Adobe RGB and can get up to about 400 nits in maximum brightness. Now all those are good stuff, but the real kicker is the refresh rate. This is a 120Hz panel and it's simply great. Compared to standard 60Hz, 120Hz it's a game changer. It feels great to use for not just gaming but even simple tasks like browsing YouTube. The motion, the overall experience is just so much more fluid. Now, is it the best 120Hz panel out there? I would say definitely not. I did notice a little bit of ghosting in fast-paced shooters like say Battlefield 5, so the response time is not the best. I'm guessing around 15 to 20. Now, I'm no expert, but that's my experience. If you're someone who's really sensitive to that kind of stuff, it might be an issue, but overall, you will get used to it. And the main thing is that it's a 120Hz panel, and that in itself makes it great. The Blade Stealth does have a 720p webcam. It's not the best, but definitely not the worst. I would still say it's better than most out there. The microphone does sound decent, though I'll still suggest getting a good headset, especially for long gaming sessions. Overall, it's an okay webcam that will get the job done. The webcam does support facial recognition for authentication via Windows Hello, so that's another positive. Moving down, we have the keyboard, and I'm glad to finally announce that Razer has listened, and they have solved the main issue that was present in the previous generation. They've moved the full-size arrow keys back down to half size, and so the slash and question mark key is finally right beside the shift key like it should be. It's so much better now, you won't get as many typos with this layout. The keys have a slight clicky feel and it's really tactile. Of course, there's full RGB for you to play with. I do feel that the backspace button is slightly smaller than desired, and I do wish that the delete key and the power button swap positions, but overall it's a great typing experience. Next, we have the trackpad, and I believe I've mentioned this before, but I find that trackpads on the Razer Blades are arguably the best in the Windows market, on par with that with the Surface laptop from Microsoft themselves. It's only bested by the best of the best, the MacBooks. Those still reign supreme, but nevertheless, this is a really good trackpad. It's a glass surface, runs precision, tracks really well, and the clicks are also satisfying. I can see myself using just the trackpad for something like a simple video edit and not finding myself immediately reaching out for a mouse. And I think that says a lot. Next are the speakers. Once again, Razer has impressed me. Now, is it the best laptop speakers out there? Definitely not. Those belong to the MacBook. It's on a whole other level. But for a Windows-based ultra-portable machine, these speakers are really good. It's got good separation thanks to the dual firing speakers, vocals are clean, highs are clear, and there's definitely more depth in the bass. These are speakers that you will definitely enjoy. We now come to ports, and the Blade Stealth does feature a pretty standard amount. On the left, you get a Type-C USB 3.1 Gen 2 port that does support both power input and display output, a standard USB 3.1 and your headphone mic combo jack. On the right, you get another standard USB 3.1 and a Type-C port that supports Thunderbolt 3. With that Thunderbolt 3 port, you can connect to various peripherals like storage or NAS solutions or external graphics card like you can with the Razer Core X. Having Thunderbolt 3 gives you that flexibility, so it's always nice to have. So that's for the physical aspect of the Razer Blade Stealth. We now come to performance, and this is where this laptop really shines. Get an Intel Core i7-1065G7, 16GB of RAM running at 3733MHz, a 512GB NVMe SSD, and lastly but most importantly, an Nvidia GeForce GTX 1650 Ti Max-Q for the graphics. First up, Cinebench R20. First few times I ran the benchmark, I noticed my scores were a little underwhelming, especially knowing the fact that Razer placed in the 25W version of the 1065G7 in the Blade Stealth. I soon realized that it was the power settings within Razer Synapse. By default, it was unbalanced, so I quickly swapped over to the gaming profile and re-ran the benchmark once more. And wow, the scores put a smile on my face. I was now getting 1644 on the multi-core score and a solid 400 on the single-core score. It's almost a 25% increase on the multi-core score just from the difference in profiles. It's by far the best performing 1065G7 out of all that I've tried. Moving on to DaVinci Resolve. The Blade Stealth managed to render the 10-minute 1080p edit under 15 minutes, while the 15-minute 4K edit took just over 40 minutes. Again, the results were really impressive, and I would say that that's thanks to the 25W 1065G7 along with the inclusion of the 1650 Ti Max-Q. This is one of the few laptops of this size that I can actually say is good enough for 4K video editing. Now of course, I would still suggest dropping your timeline resolution down to a quarters just so that you can get better scrubbing, but needless to say, 4K video editing is doable on this laptop. But put creative work aside for a moment. This is Razer, so we have to cover gaming. At first glance, a GTX 1650 Ti might not seem like much, but it's actually plenty powerful and you'll be surprised at the games that it can handle. I was able to get over 60 frames per second in Call of Duty Modern Warfare on the high preset at 1080p, and if you're playing esports titles like CSGO, you can expect frame rates well above 100, making full use of that 120Hz refresh rate. Temperatures are also really well maintained, with both the CPU and the GPU hardly ever hitting the mid-80s, most of the time hovering between 70 degrees Celsius and 80 degrees Celsius. It's honestly impressive how Razer has managed to cram this amount of performance in such a thin chassis without compromising thermals. But it's not all that great. Even though the temperatures are really well controlled, the entire chassis is made of aluminum, so it kind of acts like one giant heatsink. If you're gaming for longer periods of time, your hand around the WASD key will definitely feel the heat, and it will get uncomfortable. If you're here in Singapore, I'll definitely suggest to only game on this laptop with the AC on. In terms of upgradability, you don't really get access to much. With the bottom cover off, you can see the dual fans and the heat pipe array, which does a good job at cooling the system as mentioned earlier. The RAM is unfortunately soldered on, so there's no upgrading that. All you can do is swap out the NVMe drive, though I would say that it's not necessary considering that it's pretty great, with good read and write speeds for both sequential and 4K random. The other thing you can do is swap out the Wi-Fi card, though again, I would say that you don't need to, as the one included is Wi-Fi 6 capable. Right at the bottom is the battery, which will net you about 5 hours plus of actual real-world usage with the display brightness at 50%, running at 120Hz, along with the RGB keyboard turned on. Battery life is not the best, it's in fact the weakest point of the Blade Stealth. You can somewhat extend it by reducing the screen brightness, changing it back down to 60Hz, turning off your RGB, and perhaps you'll get an additional hour or so. Overall, the Razer Blade Stealth is a really amazing laptop. It's lightweight, it's compact, and offers a whole lot of performance. I really enjoyed my time with it. But like I mentioned, this laptop is designed for a really niche group of people, and it's not exactly that affordable. If you're within that niche group of people and you're willing to fork out that amount of cash, then yes, the Razer Blade Stealth is going to be fantastic for you. But I dare say that most of us aren't. And for most of us, there are far too many better options out there. But now, I'm going to throw a curveball. Despite how much I enjoyed this laptop, I can't recommend it to anyone, even if you are part of the niche group of people and willing to fork out that cash. The main reason is the Intel CPU. The Intel Core i7-1065G7 is great for gaming but not the best for creative work, especially when you know that there's AMD with the Ryzen 7 4800U that has twice the amount of cores and threads. Now, if Razer were to release a version of the Blade Stealth featuring that AMD chip, then I would say hands down, it's going to be the best ultra-portable powerhouse of a laptop, and I'll wholeheartedly recommend it to anyone within that niche and even outside that niche. But at the moment, I just can't do that because of the Intel chip. Now, I'm not saying that it's not a good laptop. The Blade Stealth is a really good laptop. But could it be better? It definitely could. I'm just hoping that Razer will one day work together with AMD. Anyway, those are my thoughts. If you have any questions, drop us a comment down below. Subscribe to us if you haven't. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Till the next one. See ya!